Machiavelli's ideas still unsettle people because they hold up a mirror we don't always want to look into. They expose the quiet movements beneath public life, the hidden motives, shifting alliances, and fragile loyalties that shape every decision. When you step into his world, you sense a different kind of seriousness, as if each choice carries consequences that outlive the moment. That atmosphere of tension draws us in even today because it feels closer to truth than comfort. Diving into the backdrop of his writing reveals why his voice still cuts through time. Renaissance Italy was not the romantic scene people imagine. It was a landscape of constant betrayal, rival families, and leaders who rose or fell overnight. Power shifted like weather, and survival demanded clarity, not wishes. Machiavelli watched this chaos up close. He observed how a single misread intention could destroy a lifetime of work, and how the smallest hesitation could open the door to downfall. In that environment, instinct wasn't enough. Leaders had to see beyond the surface, read the room before speaking, and remain grounded while everything around them moved like a storm. That is why his ideas feel so subtle, yet so sharp. They were not designed for theatrics or dramatic displays of dominance. They were built for people who had to navigate danger quietly, who understood that the real battles happened long before swords were drawn or agreements were signed. His lessons are unsettling because they suggest that the most decisive moves often take place internally, in the mind of the observer who refuses to be rushed or deceived. When modern thinkers revisit his work, they sense the same undercurrent that once shaped nations. It whispers that strength is rarely loud, and that the most effective power can pass unnoticed until the moment it matters. Machiavelli understood something uncomfortable about people. We are far more predictable than we like to admit. Beneath our individual differences, he saw patterns that repeated across every court, every city, and every generation. He noticed how quickly fear can override reason, how easily flattery can distort judgment, and how often people choose convenience over truth. These tendencies weren't flaws in his eyes. They were part of the structure of human behavior. By recognizing them, he believed anyone could move through the world with greater clarity, not to dominate others, but to avoid being blinded by wishful thinking. He saw that most actions people take are driven by impulses they barely notice, a desire to be accepted, a fear of embarrassment, a need to feel important. These quiet forces guide decisions more than logic does, and once you understand them, the noise of the world becomes easier to interpret. This perspective reveals that the advantage never comes from force. It comes from awareness, from noticing the emotional currents others ignore, from recognizing the small cues that hint at intentions before they are spoken. The real power rests in seeing what most overlook, and this is where curiosity begins to build. When you realize how steady these patterns are, you start to look at interactions differently. You notice what drives people without needing to react to it. You sense opportunities to stay calm when others rush. You understand that strength grows from observation, not aggression, and that the sharpest advantage appears quiet. You are stepping into a perspective most people never examine closely. It asks you to slow your thoughts, steady your emotions, and study the world with a clarity that rises above distraction. This mindset shifts you from reacting to observing, from assuming to understanding. It prepares you to see the small signals people broadcast without realizing it. Instead of rushing toward conclusions, you begin to let information come to you quietly and without pressure. That simple shift changes everything. As you settle into this calmer state, you start to recognize how it is to move through life with this level of awareness. Most people hurry, react, and reveal themselves without meaning to. You are choosing a path, one defined by steadiness rather than noise. This prepares you for the insight ahead, a piece of understanding that does not shout for attention but waits for the mind, that is, to notice it. Strategic restraint is the quiet force behind many strong leaders, because the moment you become predictable, you give others a map of your reactions. When people know exactly how you think, they can steer you without effort. But when you hold back, when you move with intention instead of impulse, the balance shifts. Restraint does not mean silence or distance for its own sake. It means choosing what deserves your energy. The person who reveals everything becomes easy to read, and once they are easy to read, they are easy to corner. But the one who keeps some thoughts unspoken, who moves without advertising every intention, creates a space others cannot enter. Uncertainty may feel uncomfortable to some, but it naturally pulls attention toward the person who carries it. People lean in, trying to interpret signals, trying to understand the logic behind each calm step. Without realizing it, submit. They begin to react to you instead of expecting you to react to them. This shift is subtle but powerful, because control often appears in the space between what is known and what is assumed. When others cannot pin down your next move, they hesitate, and hesitation gives you time. That pause creates a small opening, and in that opening, you gain freedom to choose your direction instead of being pushed into it. Strategic restraint is not about hiding. It is about guiding perception without force. By revealing less, you give others room to reveal more, and what they reveal becomes insight you can use. The leader who understands this does not rush to be understood. They allow mystery to work quietly on their behalf. In a world that rewards constant expression, restraint becomes a rare form of strength that few notice, yet everyone feels. It protects your depth and strengthens perception. People feel safest when they believe they understand what others are thinking. This sense of clarity gives them confidence, even if their assumptions are wrong. When someone reveals their intentions openly, most people relax, because the unknown no longer threatens them. But when a person holds their intentions lightly, offering no clear direction, others begin to feel the ground shift beneath them. They cannot categorize this person, and without a category, they cannot predict their reactions. That uncertainty removes the usual shortcuts the mind relies on to feel in control. Someone who does not offer immediate clarity becomes harder to sway, because influence depends on knowing how a person responds. If you cannot be read easily, others hesitate before pushing, judging, or challenging you. They step more carefully, unsure of the consequences of misreading your stance. This creates a kind of quiet shield around you, one that does not rely on force, but on the absence of certainty. People instinctively respect what they do not fully understand, because mystery carries the suggestion of depth, and depth makes others cautious, even if they cannot explain why. When you decline to offer immediate answers, people start filling the silence with their own interpretation, and those interpretations often reveal more about their desires than about your actual intentions. This dynamic shifts influence toward you, because their assumptions create a landscape you can navigate without exposing your direction. The less you rush to define yourself, the more thoughtfully others approach you. That space strengthens. In modern life, the way you manage what you reveal shapes nearly every interaction you have. Whether you're dealing with co-workers, friends, or casual acquaintances, people draw conclusions from the smallest clues. A single detail can decide how they speak to you, how much they trust you, or how far they believe they can push. When you choose your disclosures carefully, you create boundaries without announcing them. People sense the limit and respond with more respect, because something about your presence signals caution. You become someone they cannot easily categorize, and that uncertainty influences how they behave around you in workplaces. This steadiness helps you avoid being dragged into needless conflict, because people hesitate before assuming your stance. In social circles, it allows you to maintain your own pace instead of matching everyone's expectations. In reputation, it creates a sense of depth, because you are not broadcasting every thought for others to dissect. Understanding what to reveal and what to hold back gives you quiet control over the tone of your relationships. It lets you move through the world without losing your stability to constant reaction. Over time, this calm presence reshapes how others approach you in subtle ways daily. Machiavelli's most overlooked insight is that power begins long before a decision is made or an action is taken. It starts in the way others perceive you. Before you speak, before you move, before you show who you are, people are already forming conclusions. They decide whether to respect you, challenge you, listen to you, or ignore you based on an image they assemble in their minds. Machiavelli understood that if you could shape that image early, everything that followed became easier. He saw that opportunity often comes to those who appear steady and intentional, while conflict tends to find those who seem uncertain or easily swayed. Perception acts like a silent filter, determining which doors open and which remain closed. Someone who carries themselves with quiet clarity will receive trust more quickly than the person who tries too hard to earn it. Someone who seems calm in uncertainty is treated differently from the one who reacts to every shift. People respond not to your inner world, but to the version of you they believe they see. This is where Machiavelli's trick reveals itself. You don't have to force reactions from others. You simply have to understand that the impression you give off creates a momentum of its own. When people think you are thoughtful, they interpret your silence as reflection. When they think you are confident, they see your restraint as intention. When they think you are grounded, they read your calm as strength. Their minds fill in the gaps, and those gaps shape the interaction. This is not deception or performance. It is recognizing that humans rely on symbols, cues, and patterns to navigate the world quickly. By being aware of the signals you send, you position yourself to move through situations with less resistance. The perception others hold becomes a frame through which every action you take is interpreted. Instead of trying to control outcomes directly, you influence the lens through which others view them. Perception quietly guides behavior, and those who understand this principle find that influence often arrives without needing to be demanded. People rarely see others as they are. Instead, they build internal portraits shaped by their own fears, past experiences, expectations, and assumption. When someone meets you, their mind searches for familiar patterns to categorize you quickly. A tone of voice might remind them of someone they once trusted. A gesture might trigger a memory of someone they disliked. Without meaning to, they assemble an identity for you before you have said much at all. These mental shortcuts are not signs of carelessness. They are part of how the mind tries to save energy, but they create a gap between who you are and who others believe you to be. Machiavelli understood this gap better than most. He believed that influence begins long before negotiations, alliances, or decisions. It starts in a silent moment when someone first forms an impression of you. That impression becomes the frame through which they interpret your intentions. This means that influence is not a sudden act. It is a slow formation. The way you carry yourself, the steadiness in your expression, the patience in your timing, these elements shape the mental picture others construct. Once that picture is set, it becomes the foundation of how they interact with you. They adjust their tone, their expectations, and even their caution based on that unspoken image. Machiavelli's insight wasn't about controlling people. It was about understanding the natural process by which people create meaning. When you know how these impressions form, you become more aware of the presence you project. You stop assuming others see your intentions clearly and start recognizing that their perception is built from a mixture of their world and the signals you provide. Influence begins quietly, in the space where assumptions settle into beliefs. The most powerful presence often comes from those who move with neutrality and controlled emotion. When you are not rushed by irritation, excitement, or the need to prove yourself, your presence becomes steady in a way others cannot easily interpret. That steadiness creates an aura that feels intentional. It signals that your actions are chosen rather than triggered. Without saying a word, you shape how others read the situation. Selective expression deepens this effect. You don't need to share every thought or react to every shift. By choosing what deserves your voice and what does not, you guide the tone of interactions without force. People fill the quiet with their own interpretations, and those interpretations often align with the calm you project. This creates an atmosphere where you seem composed even when circumstances are uncertain. Clarity of purpose adds the final layer. When your direction is grounded, not loud, not dramatic, but steady, others sense that you are not easily pulled off course. This clarity doesn't require explanation. It radiates through how you hold yourself. People naturally respond with more caution, more respect, and more attentiveness because they feel the weight of someone who moves with understanding. All of this forms the heart of the principle. The real work happens inside you. Influence is not something you impose. It emerges from the mindset you cultivate, the discipline you carry, and the restraint you practice. Before it reaches others, it begins within your own composure. The perception you create becomes a reflection of your inner steadiness, and that reflection shapes how the world approaches you. Machiavelli believed that those who maintain a slight distance from the world see it more clearly. Not isolation, not coldness, just enough space to let thoughts settle before they turn into reactions. When you create that space, you step out of the noise that pulls most people into impulsive choices. You watch, you listen, and you notice details that disappear when emotions crowd the mind. Distance becomes a way to protect your clarity without withdrawing from life. This separation is not about being unreachable. It is about being intentional. When you're not absorbed in every conversation or emotional current around you, your judgment sharpens. You begin to understand motives rather than simply responding to them. You sense patterns in people's behavior because you're not tangled in their expectations. The slight gap gives you a vantage point, a broader view of the situation unfolding in front of you. With distance, you move differently. You speak less but mean more. You choose your pace instead of being pulled into someone else's urgency. People who rush often reveal more than they intend. People who pause reveal reveal only what they choose. That pause becomes your advantage. It signals that you are not driven by impulse or pressure, but by purpose. Machiavelli saw that a person who keeps measured distance appears grounded in a world filled with uncertainty. They do not react the moment something happens. They take it in, understand it, and decide from a place of calm. This steadiness makes their actions feel deliberate, even when the path is unclear. Distance shapes perception. It allows you to move with intention instead of noise, clarity instead of haste. In a world that constantly demands attention, measured distance becomes a quiet form of strength. When you maintain distance, people naturally adjust how they approach you. You become harder to misjudge because you're not broadcasting every feeling or thought. The less you reveal in haste, the less others assume. That absence of constant expression creates a steadier image, one that makes people more cautious before drawing conclusions. Distance also makes you harder to pressure. When someone cannot rely on emotional closeness to sway you, they step more carefully. They sense that you are not easily shaken by urgency or persuasion. This steadiness shifts the dynamic. You become someone who chooses rather than someone who is pulled. Your boundaries form without needing to be spoken. Respect often grows in this space. People tend to value what they cannot immediately access. And when your presence isn't offered too freely, it carries more weight. Not because you're withholding, but because you're intentional. Your attention feels deliberate rather than scattered. And that deliberateness changes the tone of every interaction. This distance also gives you psychological comfort. When you're not entangled in unnecessary closeness, you see situations as they are, not as your emotions hope they will be. You avoid absorbing the tension, urgency, or expectations of others. You protect your energy without conflict. The clarity you gain from that separation becomes a quiet anchor you can return to. No matter how chaotic your environment becomes, measured distance is not a wall. It is a filter that keeps your judgment clear. Distance strengthens the discipline to stay calm when others rush. It gives you space to regulate your emotions instead of being pulled into the heat of the moment. When you are not absorbed in every situation, you move through challenges with a steadier pulse. That composure becomes a foundation, a way to stay anchored when the world tries to pull you off balance. This discipline doesn't just protect you, it guides the way others engage with you. People sense when someone cannot be provoked easily. They respond with more care and less pressure because the emotional tone you set influences the room. This leads naturally into the next idea, adaptability. Once you have distance and composure, you can shift your approach without losing yourself. You can adjust without reacting, and that ability becomes one of the strongest forms of intelligence you can carry. Power is never fixed. It shifts, bends, and rearranges itself constantly, and those who remain rigid eventually snap under pressure. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He observed that influence doesn't belong to the strongest or the loudest. It belongs to the person who can adjust with purpose, shifting tactics as easily as the situation demands. Rigidity, he warned, is the true enemy of influence because it blinds you. It traps you in one way of thinking, one reaction style, one path, even when the world around you has already changed. Adaptability, to Machiavelli, wasn't about being indecisive. It was about having the intelligence to know when to act and when to wait, when to push forward with force and when to simply observe the next move of others. He believed that someone who can alter their approach without losing control gains a powerful advantage. They're not predictable, and yet they're not chaotic. They move like water on the surface, strategic underneath. This flexibility is a form of psychological intelligence. It allows you to navigate shifting social landscapes, unexpected challenges, and the unpredictable behavior of others with clarity rather than panic. When you're adaptable, you don't break when plans fail. You don't crumble when people behave differently than expected. Instead, you adjust, recalculate, and move again even if the environment seems unstable. Machiavelli saw that leaders who were too attached to one strategy often fell quickly. They were outmaneuvered by those who stayed fluid. Power, he argued, belongs not to the person with the perfect plan, but to the person who can rewrite the plan mid-battle without losing focus. Adaptability is the silent weapon because it doesn't announce itself. It isn't dramatic. It operates through awareness, timing, observation, and subtle shifts. But when used correctly, it becomes one of the most reliable foundations of long-term influence. People who master adaptability project a calm, steady presence in chaotic environments. They don't look shaken because they never expected life to stay predictable. They read shifts early, adjust quickly, and carry themselves with an ease that feels controlled rather than reactive. This creates an aura of confidence that others can feel immediately. Adaptable people aren't unpredictable in a reckless way. Their unpredictability is calculated. It prevents others from boxing them in or assuming they know exactly what they will do next. This creates respect because people instinctively admire someone who can operate under pressure without losing their internal balance. When someone is rigid, it's easy to manipulate them. You know exactly how they'll respond, what will unsettle them, what will trigger them, and what will confuse them. But when someone is adaptable, those entry points disappear. You can't corner them because they can shift their position. You can't force them because they can switch tactics. Their mind is not stuck in one mode, so pressure has nothing to grip onto. Machiavelli believed that this flexible stability made others hesitant to challenge you. People second-guess themselves around someone who doesn't react the way they expect, and that hesitation, those few extra seconds of uncertainty, gives the adaptable person even more power. Most importantly, adaptability protects your internal state. When you're able to shift your approach, you don't collapse emotionally when circumstances change. You have fewer moments of panic and fewer moments where you feel lost. You understand that change is normal, not a threat, but a signal that it's time to adjust your angle and keep moving. In the modern world, adaptability is more valuable than ever. Situations change quickly: school, workplaces, friendships, social environments, online dynamics. People shift loyalties, expectations move faster, and uncertainty isn't an exception. It's the default. Machiavelli's lesson remains clear. The people who thrive are the ones who adjust without losing themselves. Whether you're dealing with a misunderstanding, a tense environment, or a situation where the outcome is unclear, adaptability gives you room to maneuver. You can remain steady while choosing the most effective response instead of reacting impulsively. You're able to change your tone, your pace, your strategy while still staying aligned with your core values and long-term goals. This is the key. Adaptability doesn't mean being fake or switching personality. It means adjusting your method while protecting your identity. It means knowing what matters and what can be flexible. It means responding based on awareness rather than habit. Someone who can do this becomes resilient. They don't get overwhelmed by social shifts or unpredictable behavior. They understand how to pause, observe, adjust, and strike when the timing is right. This chapter leads directly into the next, a deeper dive into the art of resilience and the strength that comes from being able to bend without breaking. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of power. Most people rush to fill empty space with explanations, reactions, or unnecessary words because silence makes them uncomfortable. Machiavelli understood that this discomfort reveals something important. Silence exposes people. When you stay quiet, others start talking more. They reveal intentions, insecurities, and assumptions without realizing it. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects their internal world. This is why silence is psychologically powerful. It forces others to guess what you're thinking. Humans hate uncertainty, and when they don't know your thoughts, they begin creating their own interpretations. Those assumptions often reveal far more than any conversation could. Silence, used with intention, becomes a strategy of insight. It lets you observe without interrupting, understand without exposing your own position, and read people without giving them anything to read from you. Silence also builds presence. When you speak less, your words weigh more. People start paying attention when you choose to speak, because they've learned that you don't talk unless you have something meaningful to say. This naturally elevates your influence without you having to try. Machiavelli would say, silence creates an invisible gravity. It pulls attention toward you without noise, without force, and without effort. People respect someone who doesn't scramble to be heard. Someone who stays quiet looks composed, intentional, and grounded. Silence signals confidence because only a secure person can resist the urge to explain themselves constantly. When used thoughtfully, silence becomes a shield and a lens at the same time, protecting your inner world while helping you understand the world of others. Silence isn't just a social strategy, it's a clarity tool. When you reduce noise, distractions fade. When you stop reacting instantly, you begin to see situations more objectively. Many mistakes come from speaking too fast, making assumptions, or letting emotions lead. Silence creates a small pause, and in that pause, you regain control. Clarity grows when your mind isn't busy preparing reactions. Silence gives you the mental space to decide what actually matters and what is simply noise demanding attention. And when you're not constantly explaining yourself or responding responding to every comment, you position yourself with more strength. People recognize that your silence isn't weakness, it's restraint. Machiavelli understood that silence protects judgment. It keeps you from being manipulated, rushed, or pulled into problems that aren't yours. The less noise you create, the more power you hold, because silence keeps your intentions hidden and your perspective sharp. Silence and perception control work together. Silence protects what others see, while perception control shapes what they think they see. Both are internal disciplines, rooted in awareness, timing, and self-restraint. Silence stops you from giving away information unnecessarily. Perception control lets you decide what information you want others to notice. Together, they make you harder to read and harder to predict, qualities that increase respect and reduce the chances of being underestimated. As you refine silence, you strengthen your ability to guide how others interpret your presence. This sets the stage for the next chapter, where the focus shifts to emotional resilience and the calm confidence that comes from mastering your inner responses. Machiavelli believed that true power is born inside before it ever appears outside. A leader who collapses outwardly, who falters in action or loses influence, has first faltered inwardly. Their mindset, unsteady and distracted, ripples outward. The real advantage, the subtle power trick, is not in controlling others, is in mastering yourself. Your thoughts, your composure, and your ability to observe without distraction determine how you act and how the world responds to you. When you cultivate mental clarity, patience, and strategic awareness, your presence alone becomes commanding. People feel it in your steadiness, in the way you pause before responding, in the subtle confidence of someone who is grounded in their own understanding. Machiavelli saw that if you secure your inner court, the private space of your thoughts and judgment, you become unshakable. The choices you make, the timing of your actions, and the calm with which you navigate challenges all flow naturally from this inner mastery. Outward influence follows as a reflection of inner discipline, and the mind that governs itself rarely meets defeat. All the principles we've explored, shaping perception, maintaining distance, mastering adaptability, exercising restraint, and cultivating silence, converge into a single source of strength: inner stability. Each skill reinforces the other, but none reaches its full potential without a steady mind. The ability to pause, observe, and act with intention creates a foundation from which influence flows effortlessly. When your inner court is secure, you are not moved by every fluctuation in the environment or the opinions of others. You carry a quiet confidence that does not need affirmation. Your presence signals competence and clarity without words. Others sense your steadiness and adjust their behavior accordingly, often revealing more than you need to ask. This internal stability becomes both shield and compass. It protects you and guides every action with precision. The culmination of these practices leaves you elevated, alert, and calm. You navigate life with a measured awareness, seeing opportunities and risks clearly without haste. You no longer react to the world, you move through it intentionally. That is the ultimate lesson. Power begins within, and from that quiet mastery, all outward influence emerges naturally.